Stop this wedding. 3 words shattered everything. Tracy Tron, the white mother-in-law, stood there in her designer gown and diamond necklace that probably cost more than most people's houses, looking at Francisca, the black bride, like she was dirt on her expensive shoes. "I'm sorry, but I have to say this. I cannot stay silent while my son makes the biggest mistake of his life." Francisca couldn't breathe. This couldn't be happening. Not here. Not now. Not in front of all these people. But it was happening. Tracy took a step toward the altar. Toward Francisca. Her voice cut through the chapel like a knife. "What exactly do you bring to this marriage, Francisca? My son is a Tron. His family has built empires. We have a legacy. We have breeding. We have wealth and status and connections that go back generations." She paused. Let every word sink in. Let everyone in that chapel understand exactly what she was about to say. "And you're a charity case. A girl from nowhere with nothing. Do you even have a college degree? Or did you drop out and decide my son was your lottery ticket out of poverty?" Someone in the back laughed. Francisca felt 300 pairs of eyes on her, judging her, pitying her. Some of them enjoy this. The black girl who tried to climb above her station, now being publicly humiliated at her own wedding. This was their entertainment. Tracy wasn't done. "You work in tech support, don't you? Answering phones, resetting passwords, and you thought you could just smile pretty and my son would overlook the fact that you bring absolutely nothing to this family? You're a gold digger. Plain and simple, and I will not stand here and watch my son destroy the Tron legacy for someone like you. Someone like you." Those words hit harder than anything else. Francisca looked at Fidelis, her fiancé, the man standing next to her in his expensive tuxedo, the man who told her he loved her, the man who promised to protect her. He was staring at his shoes. Not at her, not at his mother, but at his shoes. Francisca waited, waiting for him to speak up, waiting for him to tell his mother she was wrong, waiting for him to defend her. The silence stretched. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, an eternity. He said nothing, and that's when something inside Francisca changed. If this story already has you on the edge of your seat and you want to see how justice prevailed, hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens next will blow your mind. And let us know where you are watching from in the comment section. But before we get to how Francisca destroyed an empire in a wedding dress, let me take you back 6 months. Because you need to understand exactly how she got there. 6 months earlier, Francisca Swan was sitting in her boardroom on the 42nd floor of Swan Global Tech headquarters in downtown Chicago. Around the table sat 12 of her senior executives. They were discussing expansion into 3 new metropolitan areas, contract values in the hundreds of millions. Everyone in that room respected her. When she spoke, they listened. When she made a decision, they executed. At 32 years old, Francisca ran a $3 billion company that specialized in smart city infrastructure, traffic systems, energy grids, public safety networks. If you lived in a major city in America, there was a good chance her technology was running underneath it. She'd built this company from almost nothing. Her father, Richard Swan, had started a small tech startup back in the 90s. When he died of a heart attack 8 years ago, he left her a struggling company with 23 employees and more debt than revenue. Francisca was 24 years old then, fresh out of business school, grieving, terrified, but her father had taught her something important. That merit matters more than background. That hard work beats privilege. That staying humble keeps you hungry. So she rebuilt his dream from the ground up. She worked 18-hour days. She learned to code so she could speak her engineer's language. She pitched to investors who looked at her like she was a child playing dress-up. She heard no 1,000 times before she heard yes once. 8 years later, Swan Global Tech was worth $3 billion. They employed over 2,000 people. Despite the money and success, Francisca lived modestly. A 2-bedroom apartment in a middle-class neighborhood. A Honda Civic, simple clothes outside of work. She'd blended in. Because the moment people knew who she was, everything changed. They either wanted something from her, or they were intimidated by her. Her assistant Maya was the only person who really knew her. She'd been with Francisca for 5 years, more than an assistant. Her best friend, her sister, her voice of reason. And she'd been on Francisca's case about her love life for months. It was a Thursday afternoon. They were in Francica's office after everyone else had gone home. "Francica, when's the last time you went on a date?" Francica didn't look up from her papers. "I went out with that architect in February." "That was 8 months ago, and you said he spent the entire dinner talking about himself." "He did." Maya leaned forward. "You deserve love, Fran. Real love, but you're never gonna find it if you don't try." "I've tried. It doesn't work. Because you lead with your job. You tell them you're a CEO and you watch them either pull out a calculator or run for the hills. So what am I supposed to do? Lie?" Maya shrugged. "Not lie. Just don't lead with it. Meet someone as yourself. Francica the person, not Francica the CEO. See if someone can fall in love with you before they fall in love with your bank account." She pulled out her phone and slid it across the desk. On the screen was a dating app. Create a profile. Use a different name. Say you work in tech, which is true, but keep it vague. Go on some dates. See what happens. Francica stared at the phone like it was a bomb. "Maya, this is insane. What's insane is you being alone when you have so much love to give." Maya stood up, heading for the door. "Just think about it." She left. Francica sat there in her empty office, staring at that phone. And that's where she made the decision that changed everything. She downloaded the app, created a profile. Not as Francica Swan CEO, as Frankie Miller, project manager. She said she worked in tech support. She used photos of herself in casual clothes. Nothing fancy, nothing that screamed money. Just her. Smiling. Normal. Within 2 days, she matched with someone. His name was Fidelis Tron. His profile showed a handsome man with kind eyes and an easy smile. His bio said he worked in family business development. He messaged her first with a thoughtful question about childhood beliefs. They messaged for 3 days. He was funny, introspective. He didn't ask about money or status. He just wanted to know her. On day 4, he asked if she wanted to meet for coffee. They met at a small coffee shop. It was easy. So easy. He told her about his work, about feeling pressure from his family's expectations. She told him she worked in tech, kept it vague. He listened like her words actually mattered. He was attentive. He remembered things from their messages. He didn't check his phone once. They went on a second date, then a third. Middle-tier restaurants, walks in parks, bookstore browsing. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't trying to impress her with money. He seemed humble, real. Francica started to fall for him. 1 month in, sitting on a bench by the lake, he turned to her and said, "I love you, Frankie. I know it's fast, but I do. You make me feel like I can be myself." She was guarded. She'd been hurt before, but there was something in his eyes that felt genuine. So she said it back. "I love you too." He talked about his family sometimes. His mother was difficult, he said, controlling, obsessed with status, but he promised he was nothing like her. He was working on setting boundaries. Francica believed him. 3 months in, he took her back to that same coffee shop, same corner table. He reached across and took her hand. "Frankie, I know this is fast, but I've never been more sure of anything. You're the person I want to build a life with. Will you marry me?" He pulled out a ring. Simple, elegant, perfect. She said yes. He kissed her. And for a moment, everything felt perfect. But then he said something that should have been a warning sign. "I can't wait for you to meet my family. They're going to love you." He paused. "Do you have something nice to wear? My mother is very particular about first impressions." His tone shifted, just slightly. There was a nervousness that wasn't there before. Francica noticed it, but she dismissed it, because she loved him, and she wanted to believe that his family would accept her. She had no idea what she was walking into. The Tron estate wasn't a house, it was a statement. Francica pulled up to the gate in her Honda Civic, suddenly very aware of how modest her car looked next to the Mercedes, BMWs, Bentley, and Tesla lining the driveway. The mansion loomed ahead. Old money. The kind of wealth passed down through generations, with expectations and traditions and a very specific idea of who belonged. She wore a simple, elegant black dress, knee-length, tasteful. She'd bought it specifically for this occasion. She thought she looked nice. But the moment she stepped out and saw other guests arriving in designer gowns and tailored suits, she realized she was underdressed. Fidelis met her at the door. He kissed her cheek, but he was stiff, nervous. His eyes darted around like he was checking to see who was watching. "You look great," he said, but there was something off in his voice. He led her inside. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, artwork that probably cost more than most people's homes. Servers in uniforms circulated with champagne, at least 100 people, all dressed to the nines. Franziska felt every eye on her, assessing, judging. And then she saw her. Tracy Tron. Tall, elegant, draped in diamonds and designer everything. Perfect hair, flawless makeup, and when she looked at Franziska, her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Mother, this is Frankie. Frankie, this is my mother, Tracy." Franziska extended her hand. "It's so nice to meet you, Mrs. Tron." Tracy took her hand limply, like she was touching something unpleasant. Her eyes raked over Franziska from head to toe. "Frankie, how quaint." She released Franziska's hand. "Tell me, dear, what do your parents do?" The question was designed to categorize her, to figure out where she fit in the social hierarchy. "My father passed away several years ago. He was an entrepreneur. My mother is a retired nurse." The temperature dropped 10 degrees. Tracy's smile tightened. "A nurse, how noble." She turned to nearby guests. "Isn't it wonderful how generous my son is? Looking beyond backgrounds, beyond expectations. It's very modern of him." The guests laughed politely, but Franziska heard what Tracy was really saying. She was saying Franziska didn't belong, that her son was slumming it. Fidelis said nothing. He just stood there, smiling awkwardly. The party continued. Franziska was introduced to family friends, business associates, people with hyphenated last names, and Ivy League educations. They asked questions designed to embarrass. "Where did you go to school, Frankie?" "State University. On scholarship." "Oh, how resourceful. And what do you do?" "I work in tech." "Tech support?" Something like that. They exchanged knowing looks. Looks that said, "Ah, so that's the situation." Nobody asked follow-up questions. Franziska was already categorized, filed away. The girl from nowhere who got lucky, Fidelis's cousin Brandon, drunk and loud, stood up to make a toast. "To my cousin Fidelis, who's always done everything right. Right schools, right job, right friends. And now he's doing something totally unexpected. He's marrying for love instead of a prenup." The room erupted in laughter. People clinked glasses. Fidelis laughed too, awkward and uncomfortable. Franziska looked at him, waiting for him to say something, to defend her, to tell his cousin that joke wasn't funny. He didn't. That's when she felt it, the first real crack in her heart. Later, Tracy cornered Franziska in a hallway away from the crowd. "Let me be frank with you, Frankie." She said the name like it was an insult. "What do you want from my son?" "I love him." Tracy laughed. Actually laughed. "Love? How romantic. But love doesn't pay for the lifestyle you're about to enjoy, does it? My son is a Tron. Do you understand what that means? It means legacy. It means responsibility. It means marrying someone who can contribute to that legacy, not drain it. I don't want his money, Mrs. Tron." "Everyone wants money, dear. Some people are just better at pretending they don't." She leaned in closer. "I'm going to be watching you very carefully, and if I find out you're taking advantage of my son, you'll regret it." She walked away, leaving Franziska standing there, shaking. That night, Fidelis drove Franziska home. She was quiet, fuming, hurt. "Why didn't you defend me?" she finally asked. He sighed. "My family is old-fashioned, Frankie. They just need time to warm up to you. Your cousin called me a gold digger in front of 100 people. Your mother basically accused me of being a con artist, and you just stood there. I didn't want to make a scene. So you let them make me the scene instead?" He pulled up to her apartment. "Just be patient. Once we're married, once they see how good we are together, it'll get better. I promise." Franziska wanted to believe him. She desperately wanted to believe him. But as she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd made a terrible mistake. The engagement party was just the beginning. What followed were 4 months of slow, deliberate humiliation. 4 months of being made to feel small. 4 months of death by 1,000 cuts. And the worst part? Franziska let it happen. Because she kept hoping Fidelis would finally stand up for her. He never did. Wedding planning started the week after the engagement party. Franziska was excited at first, thinking they'd plan this together. Something intimate, meaningful. Something that represented them. But at the first planning meeting, Tracy showed up uninvited. Franziska had brought a Pinterest board of ideas, outdoor ceremony, simple flowers, close friends and family. Nothing extravagant, just them. Tracy walked in like she owned the place, designer handbag on her arm, sunglasses perched on her head even though they were indoors. "I've taken the liberty of booking the Wellington estate for the ceremony," before she even sat down. "It's where all the Trons get married. 300 guest capacity. I've already put down the deposit." Franziska blinked. 300 guests? We were thinking something smaller, maybe 75 people. Tracy looked at her like she'd just suggested they get married at a fast food restaurant. "Sweetheart, the Tron wedding is a social event. We have obligations. Business associates, family friends, people who need to be there. Surely you understand." Franziska looked at Fidelis. He was staring at his phone. "Fidelis?" He looked up. "The Wellington estate is really nice, Frankie. I think you'll love it. But we didn't discuss this. My mother already put down the deposit. It would be rude to back out now." And just like that, Franziska's wedding wasn't hers anymore. Over the next few weeks, every single decision she tried to make got overruled. She suggested wildflowers. Tracy insisted on imported roses and orchids. "Wildflowers are for garden parties, dear, not weddings." She wanted a small string quartet. Tracy booked a full orchestra. "We need to make an impression." Franziska tried to create a guest list that included her mother's friends, the women who helped raise her, who supported her through college, who were there when her father died. Tracy looked at the list and literally crossed their names out with a red pen. "These people aren't the right crowd, Franziska. This is a high society event. We can't have it looking like a community potluck." Franziska's face burned. "These people are my family. And they'll understand that space is limited. I'm sure they'll be happy to see photos." Franziska looked at Fidelis again. "Waiting. Maybe we can invite them to the rehearsal dinner?" he offered weakly. It wasn't enough, but she took it. Because at this point, she was taking scraps. Then came dress shopping. Tracy insisted on coming to every fitting. She brought her friends, elegant, judgmental women who looked at Franziska like she was a charity project. Franziska tried on the first dress. Beautiful, simple, classic. It made her feel like herself. Tracy wrinkled her nose. "Too plain. You need something with more presence. You're marrying into the Tron family. You need to look the part." One of Tracy's friends spoke up when Franziska tried on another dress. "It's lovely, but is it flattering for her shape?" Franziska froze. Her shape. They were talking about her body. Tracy nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. Franziska, have you considered Spanx? Maybe a more structured bodice would help." Franziska was standing on a platform in front of mirrors, in a wedding dress, being told her body wasn't good enough. The stylist tried to intervene. "I think she looks beautiful." "We're paying you for results, not flattery," Tracy snapped. Franziska tried on 8 dresses that day. Tracy vetoed all of them. She finally picked one herself. A massive, heavily beaded gown that cost $40,000 and didn't feel like Franziska at all. "This is the one," Tracy declared. "It has the elegance the Tron family expects." Franziska looked at herself in the mirror. She didn't recognize the woman staring back, but she smiled and nodded. Because she was tired of fighting. The comments didn't stop. At a family brunch, Tracy brought up Franziska's hair. "Have you thought about straightening it for the wedding? Or perhaps a weave? We want you looking polished in the photos." At a dinner party, she introduced Franziska to her friends as Fidelis's fiancée, the girl he met online. She said it like it was a punchline. At a charity gala, someone asked what Franziska did, and before she could answer, Tracy jumped in. "Oh, Frankie works in tech support. Very sweet. She's been helping Fidelis organize his emails." Franziska didn't correct her, because at this point, what was the point? Every single time she went to Fidelis afterward, every single time she told him how his mother made her feel, and every single time he minimized it. "She's just particular. That's how she is. You're being too sensitive. She's protective of me. Once we're married, once she sees how happy we are, she'll warm up. Can you just be patient, for me?" And because Franziska loved him, or because she wanted to believe she still loved him, she swallowed her hurt and stayed quiet. But here's what killed her. Fidelis never asked about her life. Never asked about her day, her work, what she was dealing with. He assumed she was just sitting around planning their wedding, waiting for him to pay attention to her. He had no idea that every night after she saw him, she went home and ran a $3 billion company. She was on conference calls at midnight with engineers in Singapore. She was reviewing contracts at 3 in the morning. She was managing crises, making decisions that affected thousands of employees, building something that actually mattered. And he never once asked what she was doing when she said she was tired. Because in his mind, she was just Frankie, the girl from nowhere, the girl who was lucky to be marrying him. Then came the breaking point that almost broke her. They were at a family dinner at the Tron estate. Just immediate family. Tracy, Fidelis, his father Richard, and his sister Elaine. They were eating an elaborate 5-course meal prepared by their private chef. Franziska was trying to enjoy it, trying to participate in conversation, trying to belong. And then Tracy brought up the prenup. Franziska, I've had our lawyers draw up the prenuptial agreement. It's fairly standard. Basically, in the event of a divorce, you receive nothing from the Tron estate or Fidelis's assets. We need to protect the family legacy from opportunists. She didn't even try to sugarcoat it. Franziska set down her fork. Excuse me? It's nothing personal, dear. It's just good business. Surely you understand. Fidelis shifted uncomfortably. Mother, maybe we should discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss. This is non-negotiable. She slid a thick document across the table. Sign it by the end of the week. Franziska looked at the prenup. She didn't even open it. She didn't need to read it to know what it said. That she wasn't worthy. That she was a threat. That she was only there for the money. The humiliation burned like acid. But here's the thing. Franziska didn't need their money. She never had. She had more money than this entire family combined. But they didn't know that. And their assumption that she was some poor girl trying to scam her way into their wealth was so insulting, so degrading, that she could barely breathe. She picked up the pen, and she signed it. Right there at the dinner table, without reading a single page, Tracy looked surprised. You're not going to review it? Why would I? I'm not marrying your son for money. I'm marrying him because I love him. Franziska looked at Fidelis when she said it, hoping he'd finally hear her. Hoping he'd finally say something that made her feel valued. He just looked relieved that she'd signed. That night, Franziska sat in her apartment and cried. Not because of the prenup, but because she was realizing that the man she fell in love with didn't exist. The Fidelis she met at that coffee shop, the humble, sensitive man who wanted to build something meaningful, was a performance. Here, in his real life, with his real family, he was just another Tron. Weak, complicit, more concerned with keeping the peace than standing up for what was right. And Franziska was falling out of love with him. But she couldn't admit that, because admitting that meant admitting she was wrong. Admitting she wasted 6 months. Admitting she let herself be degraded for nothing. So she kept going. She kept planning a wedding she didn't want. She kept smiling through insults. She kept hoping that maybe somehow things would change. Here's what they didn't know. While they were planning her wedding and signing prenups and commenting on her body, Franziska was negotiating the biggest deal of her career. Swan Global Tech was in final contract negotiations with Tron Industries, a $950 million deal to overhaul their entire real estate infrastructure with her smart city technology. The Tron family was desperate for this deal. Their real estate empire was declining. They'd made bad investments, lost key properties, hemorrhaged money. This contract with Swan Global was the only thing that would save them. They'd been negotiating for months with her CFO, Robert Chen. He'd been the public face of the deal. They had no idea Franziska was the one making the final decisions. They had no idea that the woman they were mocking, the woman they were calling a gold digger, the woman they thought was beneath them, she was the one who held their entire financial future in her hands. Franziska had kept her identity hidden deliberately, not because she planned this, but because she'd learned over the years that anonymity protected her. People treated her differently when they knew who she was. But now, as she sat through another degrading wedding planning meeting, as she listened to Tracy talk about seating charts and making sure Frankie's people didn't embarrass the family, she was thinking about that contract. She was thinking about the power she had, and she was wondering if she should use it. If you're still watching this and you want to see what happens next, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because this story is about to take a turn nobody saw coming. And let me ask you, have you ever stayed in a relationship longer than you should have? Because you didn't want to admit you were wrong? Tell me in the comments. The wedding was in 2 weeks, and Franziska still hadn't decided if she was going through with it. The morning of her wedding, Franziska woke up and she didn't feel joy. She felt dread. She was in the bridal suite at the Wellington estate. Massive, elegant, filled with flowers and champagne and all the trappings of a fairy tale wedding. Maya was there, helping her get ready. Her mother was there too, quiet and nervous, trying to smile but worry showed in her eyes. Franziska sat in front of a mirror in her $40,000 wedding dress that Tracy had picked out. Her hair had been straightened because Tracy insisted. Her makeup was flawless because Tracy hired a makeup artist who specialized in making people look refined. She looked like a stranger. Maya stood behind her, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "Fran, are you sure about this?" It was the first time anyone had asked her that question directly. Franziska opened her mouth to say yes, to say she was fine, to say she was just nervous. But the word wouldn't come out. Maya knelt down next to her. "It's not too late. You can walk away. Nobody will blame you. 300 people are out there. Let them wait. This is your life." Franziska looked at her mother. She was holding Franziska's hand, tears in her eyes. "Baby, I just want you to be happy. If you're not happy, we can leave right now. We can get in the car and go home. None of this matters if you're not happy." Franziska felt tears welling up. But she couldn't cry. The makeup artist had spent 2 hours on her face. "I'm committed," she said quietly. "I made a promise." "Promises can be broken if they're hurting you," Maya said. But Franziska shook her head, because walking away now felt like admitting defeat. It felt like proving Tracy right, that she wasn't strong enough, not good enough, not worthy of this family. So she stood up, she smoothed down her dress, she took a deep breath. "Let's do this." The ceremony was about to begin. Franziska stood at the back of the chapel, holding her mother's arm. Her mother was the one walking her down the aisle because her father wasn't there. And honestly, she was glad he wasn't. She didn't think he'd want her to go through with this. She looked through the doorway into the chapel. 300 guests. 90% from Fidelis's side. His family, his friends, his business associates, people she'd never met. Her mother's friends, the ones who helped raise her, weren't there. Tracy had made sure of that. Her mother's side of the chapel had maybe 15 people. They looked small, out of place, uncomfortable. Her mom's best friend Diane was there, wearing the nicest dress she owned, trying to fit in. Franziska could see how intimidated she was by all this wealth, all this status. It broke her heart. The music started. The doors opened, and she started walking down the aisle. Every eye in the room turned to her. She could feel their judgment, their assessment, their whispers. "That's her? The one from the dating app? She's pretty, but..." Franziska kept her head up. She kept walking, and then she saw Fidelis at the altar. He was standing there in his tuxedo, and for a moment, just a moment, she remembered why she fell for him. The smile. The kind eyes. The man who asked her about her childhood beliefs and actually listened. Maybe that man was still in there. Maybe once they were married, once this circus was over, they could find their way back to who they were. She reached the altar. Her mother kissed her cheek and took her seat. She looked so small sitting there, alone in that front row, surrounded by people who thought she didn't belong. The priest began. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Fidelis Tron and Franziska Miller." He used her fake name, because she never told Fidelis her real name. She never told him who she really was. The irony wasn't lost on her. The priest went through the traditional ceremony. They were asked if anyone objected. There was silence. The moment passed. Then they exchanged vows. It was Franziska's turn first. She looked at Fidelis and said the words she wrote weeks ago, back when she still believed in them. "Fidelis, when I met you, I was guarded. I'd been hurt before. But you made me feel safe, you made me feel seen. You promised me we'd build a life together based on honesty and respect. And I'm standing here today because I believe in that promise. I believe in us." Her voice cracked on the last sentence. Because as she was saying these words, she was realizing she didn't believe them anymore. Now it was Fidelis's turn. He took her hands. He looked at her. And he recited his vows. "Frankie, you came into my life when I needed someone real. Someone who saw me for who I am, not what I have. I promise to honor you, to cherish you, to stand by you. You're my partner, my best friend, my future. But there was something hollow in his voice, like he was reading lines from a script, like he was saying what he was supposed to say, not what he actually felt. The priest continued. They were moments away from being declared husband and wife. And that's when it happened. We're back where we started. Tracy stood up. The entire chapel went silent. The priest stopped mid-sentence. Fidelis's eyes went wide, and Tracy unleashed her humiliation, called Franzica a charity case, a gold digger, a girl from nowhere with nothing. 300 people stared at Franzica, waiting for her response, waiting to see if she'd defend herself or just crumble. Franzica looked at Fidelis. This was the moment. If he loved her, if any of this was real, he'd speak up now. Fidelis opened his mouth. Franzica's heart stopped. This was it. This was the moment she'd been waiting for through 6 months of humiliation, 6 months of biting her tongue, 6 months of making herself smaller. This was when he would finally prove that he loved her, that he saw her, that she mattered. His lips parted. She could see him forming words. Then he closed his mouth. His eyes darted to his mother, then back to Franzica. She could see the conflict written across his face. The war between the man who whispered, "I love you," in coffee shops and the son who'd never once contradicted his mother. He looked down at his shoes, and he said nothing. The silence wasn't just quiet, it was deafening. It roared in Franzica's ears like 1,000 voices, all screaming the same truth she'd been refusing to hear. You were never enough for him. 5 seconds passed. Franzica stood there, her wedding dress suddenly feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Every bead, every stitch, every expensive thread. All of it chosen by people who thought she didn't deserve to wear it. 10 seconds. She could feel her mother's eyes on her from the front row. She could feel Maya somewhere in the crowd, probably already standing, ready to rush to her side. She could feel 300 people holding their breath, waiting to see if the girl from nowhere would finally break. An eternity stretched between them. Franzica and Fidelis, 2 people standing at an altar, separated by a silence that said everything his words never could. He said nothing. And in that nothing, Franzica felt something crack inside her chest. Not her heart, that had been breaking slowly for months, a little more each time he failed to defend her, a little more each time he chose his mother's approval over her dignity. No, what cracked was something deeper. Something she'd been carrying since she was a little girl who lost her father. The belief that if she just worked hard enough, if she just proved herself enough, if she just loved someone enough, they would finally see her worth. That belief shattered, and in its place something else rose up. Something fierce. Something that had been buried under months of be patient and don't make a scene and they'll warm up to you eventually. Rage. Pure, crystalline, righteous rage. Not the hot, chaotic kind that makes you scream and throw things, but the cold, calculated kind that makes empires fall. Franzica took a breath. It shuddered in her chest, catching on all those broken pieces. She wiped the tears from her face. The last tears she would shed for Fidelis Tron, and she felt the shift happen. She wasn't the woman who tried to make everyone comfortable anymore. She wasn't Frankie Miller, the grateful girl who should be honored to marry into this family. She was Franzica Swan, and she was done being small. When she turned to face Tracy, her movements were deliberate, controlled. Every CEO who'd ever underestimated her would have recognized the look in her eyes. It was the look she wore when she walked into a boardroom knowing she held all the cards. Her voice came out calm, ice cold, steady. You want to know what I bring to this marriage? Tracy sneered, still drunk on her own sense of superiority, still believing she'd won. Enlighten us. Franzica took a step closer, close enough that Tracy could see something had changed. Close enough that the older woman's sneer faltered just slightly as she registered the shift in Franzica's eyes. This wasn't the meek girl she'd been tormenting for 6 months. This was someone else entirely. Tell me, Mrs. Tron, do you know who owns Swan Global Tech? Confusion flickered across Tracy's face. What does that have to do with? Answer the question. Franzica's voice cut through the chapel like steel. Do you know who owns Swan Global Tech? Tracy huffed, still trying to maintain her authority. It's some reclusive CEO, Swan something. Why are you asking me about? And do you know about the $950 million contract your company just signed with Swan Global? The change in Tracy's face was instant. The color drained. Her eyes widened just a fraction. Because that contract, that deal, was the only thing standing between the Tron Empire and financial ruin. And somehow, this girl knew about it. That contract is confidential. Tracy's voice had lost its condescending edge. Now it carried something else. Fear. That contract is the only thing keeping Tron Industries afloat. Francica's voice rang through the chapel, clear and strong. Your real estate empire is hemorrhaging money. You've made terrible investments. You're drowning in debt. That Swan Global contract is your last lifeline. The chapel was dead silent. 300 people leaned forward, trying to understand how the bride they'd been watching get humiliated suddenly sounded like she was running a board meeting. Tracy's face had gone pale. How do you know about our financial? Because I approved that contract. The words hung in the air. Francica watched Tracy's face, watched the wheels turning, watched her trying to make sense of what she was hearing. And then Francica said it. Clearly, loudly. So every single person in that chapel, every person who'd laughed at her, every person who'd looked down on her, every person who thought she was just a girl from nowhere with nothing, could hear. My name is not Frankie Miller. It's Francica Swan. I'm the CEO and founder of Swan Global Tech, and I'm the person who signed off on your $950 million deal. The chapel erupted. But Francica barely heard it. She was watching Fidelis, watching the man she'd fallen in love with, or the man she thought she'd fallen in love with, realize that everything he thought he knew about her was a lie. He staggered backward, his face the color of paper. His mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. And in that moment, Francica felt a strange sense of peace, because she finally saw him clearly. Not the charming man from the coffee shop who asked thoughtful questions and seemed different from other wealthy men, but the weak, spineless man who would always choose the easy path, who would always choose his mother's approval over doing what was right. She turned back to the crowd, her voice cutting through the chaos. For 6 months, I've watched your family mock me, demean me, treat me like I'm worthless. Her voice cracked just slightly on that last word. Because even now, even with all her power and money and success, those months had hurt. They'd cut deep. I stayed silent because I wanted to believe Fidelis loved me for who I am, not what I have. I wanted to believe that genuine love was possible. She turned to Fidelis. He was staring at her like she was a stranger. And maybe she was. Maybe the woman he thought he knew had never really existed. But you never defended me. Not once. Her voice broke. Not at the engagement party when your cousin called me a gold digger. Not when your mother criticized my body at the dress fitting. Not when she dismissed my mother's friends as not the right crowd. Not when she made me sign a prenup designed to ensure I got nothing. And not today, when she called me a charity case in front of 300 people. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't wipe them away. Let them see. Let them all see what their silence had cost. You let them tear me apart because you were ashamed of me. The real me. The me you didn't even know existed. Francica, Fidelis's voice cracked. I didn't know. I didn't. You didn't what? She stepped toward him. You didn't know who I was? That's because you never asked. You never cared. You just assumed I was lucky to have you. That I should be grateful you looked past my humble background to love me. Her phone rang. The sound cut through the charged silence. She pulled it from her bouquet with steady hands and answered it. On speaker, Miss Swan, I apologize for the interruption, but legal needs immediate confirmation on the Tron Industries contract termination. Should we proceed with the paperwork? Tracy's scream cut through the chapel. You can't do this. That contract is signed. It's legally binding. Francica looked at her, and she smiled. But there was no joy in it, no victory, just the cold satisfaction of knowing she'd finally found her voice. Robert, proceed with the cancellation. Effective immediately. Cite breach of good faith negotiations under the ethics clause. Understood. I'll have legal finalize the termination by Monday morning. She hung up. Read the fine print, Mrs. Tron. There's a 90-day grace period with an ethics clause. Your family's treatment of me, The pattern of discrimination, harassment, and bad faith behavior violates that clause. My lawyers will have the documentation ready by end of business Monday. Fidelis finally found his voice. Franziska, please, we can fix this. I love you. She laughed. It was the saddest sound she'd ever made. You love me? She looked at him with something like pity. You didn't even defend me when your mother called me a gold digger at our wedding. You've never defended me. You don't love me, Fidelis. You love the idea of me, the quiet, grateful girl who was supposed to be honored to marry into your family. She reached up with trembling fingers and removed her engagement ring, the simple, elegant ring he gave her at that coffee shop, back when she still believed in fairy tales, back when she thought hiding who she was would help her find real love. She'd been so wrong. She placed the ring on the altar. It made a small, final sound against the wood. I'm not that girl. I never was. She turned to walk out, but Tracy's voice stopped her. You'll regret this. I'll sue you. I'll destroy you. Franziska stopped. She was tired, so tired. But she had one more thing to say. She turned back and looked at Tracy with the full weight of her power, her money, her resources. Mrs. Tron, I have more money, more power, and more legal resources than you can imagine. If you come after me, I will bury you. Not just financially, professionally, socially. Every board you sit on, every charity you chair, every country club you belong to. I will make sure they know exactly who you are. A woman who destroyed her family's empire because she couldn't see past the color of someone's skin. Tracy went silent. Franziska looked at her mother. She was standing now, tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling. Proud. Franziska walked down that aisle one more time. But this time, she wasn't a bride. She was free. She walked out of that chapel and didn't look back. The massive doors closed behind her, and suddenly she was standing in the sunlight, still in her wedding dress, mascara running down her face, shaking. Her mother ran out after her. She didn't say anything at first. She just wrapped her arms around Franziska and held her while she fell apart. And Franziska did fall apart. Right there on the steps of the Wellington estate, in front of valets and photographers and anyone who happened to be watching, she broke down. But she wasn't crying from regret. She wasn't crying because she'd lost Fidelis, or because she'd ruined her wedding, or because she'd just walked away from a marriage. She was crying from release, from months of swallowing pain, from months of making herself smaller, from months of pretending she was someone she wasn't. She was crying because she was finally free. Her mother held her face in her hands. Baby, are you okay? Franziska laughed through her tears. Mama, I just canceled a $950 million deal and left a man at the altar. I should not be okay. Her mother smiled. But are you? Franziska took a breath. A real breath. The first one she'd taken in months. Yeah, I think I am. And that's where our story ends today. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt underestimated or undervalued or made to feel small, hit that subscribe button right now. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever had to walk away from people who didn't value you? What gave you the strength to do it? Tracy was hysterical. She was screaming at the priest, at the guests, at anyone who would listen that this was all a misunderstanding, that the contract could be salvaged, that her lawyers would fix this. But nobody was listening. They were too busy filming. Every single person in that chapel had their phone out. They were recording, they were texting, they were posting on social media. Within minutes, the video of Franziska canceling a $950 million deal at her own wedding was viral. The hashtag started immediately. The drama, the gossip, the scandal, the black bride who turned out to be a billionaire CEO and destroyed her groom's family empire on her wedding day. It was everywhere. Fidelis tried to call Franziska. She blocked his number before she even left the parking lot. He tried texting. Blocked. He showed up at her apartment that night. She didn't answer the door. Building security escorted him out. For the next 2 weeks, he tried everything. He called her office. Her assistant told him she was unavailable. He reached out to Maya. She told him to lose her number. He left voicemails on her work phone, apologies, explanations, desperate pleas. Franziska, please. I'm sorry, I should have defended you. I was weak, I was scared of my mother. But I love you. I really do love you. Please give me another chance. She deleted every single message without listening to the end. Because here's what he didn't understand. She didn't want an apology. An apology didn't undo 6 months of humiliation. An apology didn't erase the fact that he stood silent while his mother called her a gold digger at their wedding. He had 1,000 chances to defend her. He chose silence every single time. She was done giving chances to people who didn't value her. 2 weeks after the wedding that never happened, the real fallout began. Tron Industries' stock plummeted. The news that they lost the Swan Global contract sent shockwaves through the market. Investors panicked. The company's value dropped 30% in one day. Creditors started calling. Turns out, the Tron family had taken out massive loans betting on that Swan Global contract. They had leveraged everything, properties, investments, their entire portfolio, assuming that $950 million was coming. It wasn't coming. Within days, investors were pulling out. Board members were resigning. Business partners were distancing themselves. The Tron empire wasn't just wounded, it was hemorrhaging. And Tracy's precious social circle? The same people who laughed when her cousin called Franziska a gold digger? The same people who whispered about her at the engagement party? They abandoned her. Old money loves nothing more than watching old money fall. And the Trons fell spectacularly. Suddenly, Tracy wasn't getting invited to galas. She wasn't being asked to chair charity events. Her friends, the ones who mocked Franziska for wearing a simple dress, were now mocking her for her spectacular miscalculation. Franziska heard through the grapevine that at a society luncheon, one of Tracy's former friends said, "Can you imagine? She bullied a billionaire at her own son's wedding." The arrogance, the stupidity. The same people who thought Franziska wasn't good enough for their circle were now treating Tracy the same way she had treated Franziska. Karma was a beautiful thing. 1 month after the wedding, Tron Industries filed for bankruptcy. The mansion, the one where Franziska had endured that humiliating engagement party, was listed for sale. The Wellington estate canceled their contract. The family's reputation was in ruins. Franziska didn't take pleasure in their suffering. She wasn't that person. But she didn't feel guilty either. They had made their choices. They had treated her like she was worthless. And they were learning a very expensive lesson about respect. Meanwhile, Franziska's life was moving forward. She was back in her boardroom, back in her element. Swan Global Tech stocks soared after the wedding scandal. Turns out, the public loved a story about a woman who stands up for herself. Their brand value increased. They were getting partnership requests from companies all over the world. Franziska was stronger than she had ever been. But she was also lonely. She threw herself into work after the wedding. She buried herself in contracts, meetings, expansion plans. It was easier than dealing with her feelings. Maya kept telling her she needed to process what happened. She was probably right. But Franziska wasn't ready yet. Then, 6 weeks after the wedding, Franziska attended a tech conference in San Francisco. She was standing in the lobby during a break, checking emails on her phone, when someone approached her. "Franziska Swan?" She looked up. It was James Harper. She knew who he was immediately. He was the CEO of Harper Innovations, one of the top tech firms in the country. They weren't competitors exactly. They worked in different sectors, but they had been in the same industry circles for years. She had always respected his work. He had built his company from the ground up, just like she did. He was brilliant, innovative, and by all accounts, a genuinely decent person. He was also incredibly handsome, but that was beside the point. "James Harper," she said, shaking his hand. "It's nice to finally meet you in person." "Likewise." He smiled. It was warm, genuine. "I heard about what happened at your wedding. I'm sorry you went through that." She tensed slightly. She was so tired of people bringing it up. But then he said something that surprised her. "For what it's worth, I think you handled it with more grace than most people would. Standing up for yourself in that moment took courage. A lot of people would have just gone through with the wedding and been miserable." She studied his face. He wasn't mocking her. He wasn't pitching her a business deal. He was just being honest. "Thank you," she said quietly. "That means a lot." They talked for a few minutes, about the conference, about industry trends, about the projects they were working on. It was easy, comfortable. He was smart, funny, and he treated her like an equal. Not like a scandal, Not like a conquest, just like another person who loved what they did. Before they parted ways, he said, "Would you want to have dinner sometime? Not a business meeting, just dinner. I'd like to get to know you better." She hesitated, because 6 weeks ago she was supposed to get married. 6 weeks ago her heart was broken. But then she looked at James, really looked at him, and she saw something she didn't see in Fidelis. She saw someone who wasn't intimidated by her. Someone who knew exactly who she was and was intrigued, not threatened. "I'd like that," she said. He smiled. "Great, I'll call you." And he did. 6 months later, everything had changed. Francisca was standing next to James Harper at a charity gala. They weren't hiding. They weren't pretending they were just business associates. They were together, fully and publicly. And for the first time in her life, Francisca wasn't hiding who she was. She was wearing a dress she picked out herself. Her hair was natural, curly, beautiful, exactly as it should be. She wasn't trying to fit into anyone else's vision of who she should be. She was just herself. And James looked at her like she was the most amazing person in the world. The gala was for a foundation that supported girls in STEM. It was a cause she cared deeply about. And tonight, she was giving the keynote speech. She stepped onto the stage. The room quieted. Hundreds of people were watching her. She took a breath, and she spoke. 6 months ago, I stood in a chapel in front of 300 people and I was told I wasn't enough. I was told I was a charity case, a gold digger, someone who didn't deserve respect or dignity. The room was silent. And for months before that, I believed it. Not consciously, but I made myself smaller. I stayed quiet when I should have spoken up. I accepted treatment I should have rejected. Because I wanted to believe that if I was patient enough, humble enough, quiet enough, people would eventually see my value. She paused, looked out at the audience. I was wrong. Your value doesn't come from other people's approval. It comes from knowing who you are and refusing to let anyone diminish that. She saw women in the audience nodding. Some were crying. I'm not telling you this story to shame anyone. I'm telling you because I want every woman in this room, especially the young women, to know this. Never let anyone make you feel small. Never dim your light to make someone else comfortable. Your worth isn't determined by their vision. It's determined by yours. The room erupted in applause. She stepped off the stage, and James was there, waiting for her. He took her hand. That was incredible. They walked outside to the terrace. It was a beautiful night. Stars overhead, city lights below. James turned to her. There was something in his expression that made her heart race. "Francisca, I need to tell you something." She waited. "I love you. Not because of what you've built or what you've accomplished, though I'm in awe of all of that. I love you because of who you are. Your strength, your heart, the way you care about people even after they've hurt you, the way you stand up for what's right even when it costs you something." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Her breath caught. "I'm not going to get down on one knee in front of all these people. That's not us. But I am going to ask you, right here, right now, if you'll marry me. Not because I think I can save you or fix you or give you something you don't already have, but because I want to build a life with you, as equals, as partners." He opened the box. The ring was stunning. Simple, elegant, perfect. "Will you marry me?" She looked at this man. This brilliant, kind, confident man who saw her exactly as she was and loved her because of it, not despite it. She thought about Fidelis, how he wanted her to be smaller, quieter, less threatening, how he needed her to fit into his world instead of building a world with her. And then she looked at James, who wanted to build something together, who respected her, who celebrated her. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." He slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her. And it felt like everything finally made sense. 4 months later, Francisca was getting married again. But this wedding was nothing like the first one. It was small, intimate, 50 people, just close friends and family. They were in a beautiful garden, not a massive estate. The flowers were wildflowers, the ones she wanted the first time. The music was a small string quartet. Everything was simple, meaningful, theirs. Her mother was in the front row, beaming with pride. Maya was her maid of honor, crying happy tears. James was at the altar, looking at her like she was the only person in the world. Francisca walked down the aisle in a dress she chose herself. Her hair was natural. Her makeup was minimal. She looked like herself. When she reached James, he took her hands and whispered, "You're beautiful." And she believed him. They exchanged vows they wrote themselves. Real vows, honest vows, vows about partnership, respect, building a life based on mutual support and love. The priest pronounced them husband and wife. James kissed her. Their friends and family cheered. And as she stood there, holding the hand of the man who truly loved her, Franziska thought about how close she came to settling for someone who didn't. She had thought love meant being accepted, despite who she was. She was wrong. Real love meant being celebrated because of who you are. And she finally found someone who saw her. Really saw her. Not the CEO, not the success story, not the scandal. Just Franziska. And that was enough. So where are they now? Franziska Swan Harper still runs Swan Global Tech, which is now valued at $5 billion. She and James merged their companies into a strategic partnership. They work together. They build together. They dream together. They are equals in every sense of the word. Franziska still lives simply. Modest house, normal car, regular life outside the office. Because she learned a long time ago that wealth doesn't define you. Character does. As for the Trons, Tracy works for a former competitor in a junior marketing role. The woman who once ran in the highest social circles now answers to people she used to look down on. Fidelis moved across the country. He's working in middle management at a tech firm in Seattle. Word has it he never remarried. The lesson from all of this is simple. Sometimes the people who underestimate you give you the greatest gift. The clarity to walk away. The strength to demand better. The courage to be yourself. Franziska spent 6 months trying to prove she was worthy of the Tron family, but she was always worthy. She just needed to see it for herself. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you for listening. If this resonated with you, if you've ever been made to feel small, if you've ever walked away from something that wasn't serving you, hit that subscribe button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Never let anyone make you feel small. Your worth isn't determined by their vision, it's determined by yours. If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe, and share with others so they can learn too. See you in our next video.